지진물들도 힘이 장하고는 문은 전부는 게다 다그러다간 잔도 심을도 tumba들지 잔라기 좀서
To benefit beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Previously, we have already discussed in great detail the classic of filial piety, and we should now be at chapter 9. In chapter 9, a significant portion of it talks about the sage. That is to say, the so-called sage at that particular time referred to the esteemed Duke of Zhou. It discusses how he governed the country, or some of the principles of filial piety. Earlier it was mentioned that among all things between heaven and earth, human beings are the most precious. And among all human actions, nothing is greater than filial piety. As for filial piety, it first means honoring one's father. Among all the ways of honoring one's father, the main one is performing ancestral rites after his death. In other words, just like the Duke of Zhou did, this is how it is explained. So among all human actions, filial piety remains a profoundly important and fundamental virtue. Within filial piety, it can be said that respect for one's parents is essential. When parents are alive, serving and attending to them is very important. But once they have passed away, we are not like the Duke of Zhou in every respect. But in reality, after our parents pass away, we still often think of them. Frequently reciting sutras for them and performing rituals to help them transcend is very important. Generally, even if our parents have been gone for 10 or 20 years, for example, when we attend Dharma assemblies or encounter eminent monks and virtuous teachers, even if it's just 1 yuan, 5 yuan, or 10 yuan, we write our parents' names on a piece of paper and then hand it to the monks or the temple. This is very necessary. For example, in the future, when you go on a pilgrimage or visit a temple at that time, your own parents and all sentient beings, with your parents of this life as the main focus. If you request the temple to recite sutras for them, nowadays many people consult this fortune teller or that fortune teller, but actually there's no need to do that. If you recite sutras for your parents, you can recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra yourself. Just reflect on it yourself. Recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra and then the Amitabha mantra. If you are reciting sutras for someone who is still alive, you can recite the Guru Rinpoche mantra, the Medicine Buddha Sutra. These are all suitable. So some of us may not be particularly familiar with Buddhism and are always seeking out this Lama or that Lama and so on. Some of them actually have no idea how to do divination at all, but you've already appointed them as fortune tellers. Some of our female practitioners are always calling this person or that person, and then one tells 10, 10 tell 100. In the end, whether their predictions are accurate or not, no one really knows. Anyway, I think sometimes if you want to do good deeds yourself, you should be able to. If you have wisdom, you can do good deeds. You don't necessarily have to rely on others. So this is what we talked about earlier. Filial piety toward parents, being filial in this lifetime, and being filial after your parents have passed away. That's what we've discussed. Also, filial piety toward parents should be learned from a young age. That is to say, before you grow up, while still under your parents' care, you should learn this kind of love. Gradually learn from a father's wisdom and a mother's compassion. If you do this, you will truly benefit. Then in the future, whether managing a family or governing a country, there's no need to use violence. You should maintain your family with compassion. Maintain the country, maintain society. This is extremely important. We also talked about this earlier. The way of father and son is natural, and so is the righteousness between ruler and subject. Parents give us life. There is truly nothing greater than continuing that precious gift. We've already discussed these important points earlier, right? So now, today, we will begin to talk about this profound concept. When a ruler personally attends to his people, there is no greater kindness or weight. Earlier, we also mentioned that the way between father and son is a natural law. The relationship between ruler and subject illustrates this, as discussed earlier. So today, what exactly is the relationship between parents and children? In actual fact, there are two distinct layers. One layer is just as we mentioned before. That is the relationship between ruler and subject, between a ruler and his subordinates. Because nowadays, many people may be influenced by Western thought to some extent, whether it's the relationship between father and son, or between teacher and student, or even between doctor and patient. There's a lack of mutual respect. This is missing a lot. So in the relationship between ruler and subject, there is a distinction between ruler and minister. Here, attending to refers to an attitude, or you could say a relationship between those above and those below. Why is that the case? Because a father is truly someone who deserves your utmost respect and deep reverence. That's precisely the kind of relationship it is. There's another layer to this relationship, this kinship. Here, because of the very strong blood relationship, the inherent and profound relationship between parents and children, in fact, just being like the relationship between a king and his ministers isn't enough. Because you are your parents' very own flesh and blood, so in this particular case, so there is a truly unique biological and inherent bond between you. That's why being sincere and kind to your parents is more important than anything. Nothing outweighs this. Because nowadays, many people might feel that their father or mother, do they really have any kindness or grace toward me? Yes, they do. Some people whose relationships with their fathers aren't very good seem to have no sense of filial piety toward their parents at all. But actually, this is just ignorance on their part. No matter what, maybe it's your karma manifesting. Recently, I saw a story, it seemed to be in Hunan or somewhere in a certain village, where well over 100 people could vividly recall their past and future lives. Some news channels even reported on it directly. Sometimes the endless cycle of reincarnation is truly terrifying. You might even end up becoming father and son again in the very next life. And there was even a case where the mother was younger than her own child. Such things do happen. Because in a previous life, after a woman gave birth, the mother died. After she died, she was reborn once more indeed. When she was reborn, she could still recognize her. So between the two of them, she would still affectionately call her mom. She would call her mom. I can show you all of this later, but we do not have a proper PPT presentation here right now. Sometimes we can indeed show everyone. That was a truly real news story. So many people think this is something very mysterious, but actually it's really not strange at all, in fact. Why is it that the mother is a few years younger than the daughter? After the daughter was born, the mother sadly died. After she died, she was reborn into another family. At that time, she completely remembered her own beloved daughter, so she also called her mom. However, there was still a significant age difference that existed between them, so sometimes reincarnation is extremely rare. It's also clearly mentioned in the text, the Subahu Paripricha Sutra. Sometimes people become family, sometimes they become enemies, and sometimes they become something in between. So the relationships we currently have, whether close or hostile, are not very reliable. They're not particularly certain, that's how it is. Therefore, we should, when it comes to our current parents, perhaps because of some deep-seated enmity between you in a previous life, that's the reason your relationship isn't very good in this life. There might be such situations, but you can't say, I don't get along with my parents, so I treat them like enemies. Or, they abandoned me when I was little, so I just ignore them. Nowadays in the world, because of things like divorce and various other reasons, but actually it shouldn't be this way. No matter what, for you to come into this world, without the kindness and virtue of your parents, it would have been impossible. Just like it says in the words of my perfect teacher, they didn't let you rot away, didn't let you starve to death. No matter what happened when you were little, they always made sure you grew up. Your life and growth today, if it weren't for the care your parents gave you back then, you absolutely wouldn't have what you have today. So no matter what kind of person, whether your parents treated you well or not, I hope many people can change this mindset. You must be grateful to your parents. On one hand, there is the relationship between ruler and subject, and on the other hand, there is the relationship between parent and child among us. For this reason, being truly kind and genuinely respectful to them is more important than anything else. Next, I will talk about, therefore, those who do not love their own parents but love others are said to be lacking in virtue. Those who do not respect their own parents but respect others are said to be lacking in propriety. If you don't love your own biological parents, but instead love other people, whether it's loving your partner or your own children, or even loving someone else's parents, nowadays there are some young people who don't like their own parents at all, and even feel especially annoyed just seeing them, and instead are especially fond of some people who are improper or dubious in character. Such people are actually very rare. In fact, logically speaking, one should truly have a deep heart of gratitude and respect always toward one's parents. But if you don't love your own parents and instead love complete strangers, such a person is truly going against morality, because in reality, this kind of individual is also unfilial indeed. In the storehouse of sundry valuables, there is a story. There was a man who married a wife. Later on, the relationship between the daughter-in-law and her mother-in-law was not very good. The daughter-in-law especially hated her husband's mother. Whether in Tibetan regions or in Han regions, the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law is something people take very seriously. I've noticed that it's actually the same in the West. Some people treat their in-laws just like their own parents, which is very good. But at that time, the daughter-in-law treated her mother-in-law very badly. Later, she demanded that he kill his mother. The husband was also a very foolish person indeed, so he agreed, and then he started preparing. He planned to kill his own mother in a faraway, desolate place. He then took his mother out to a remote wilderness area. Then he tied her up, getting ready to kill her. At that moment, because he had already gone against his very nature and his deepest conscience, the sky became covered with dark clouds, and there was thunder. Just now that man himself was struck dead by lightning. So what does this mean? Because that son listened to his wife and did not love his own mother, but loved his wife instead, and then tried to kill her, he received retribution in this very life. He didn't succeed in killing his mother, but lost his own life on the spot. According to the Buddhist scriptures, in the next life he would also fall into hell. So looking at some past cases, not loving one's own biological parents, no matter who else you love, there should be boundaries. Otherwise it goes against the conscience of morality. If one does not truly respect their own parents but respects others, that is to say, they do not properly serve their own parents. When their parents speak, not to mention showing respect, they don't listen to any of their parents' teachings or words. They just treat it as if it goes in one ear and out the other. But they listen especially to others, including some leaders in front of higher-ranking officials. They nod and bow, showing extreme respect, just following them around. But when they come home to their own parents, their attitude is especially bad, sometimes even extremely harsh and unfriendly. People like this are actually violating proper etiquette and basic respect as well. We can see this quite clearly in many situations. Those who truly have a conscience treat their own parents very well. For example, among us monastics, we generally do not prostrate to lay people. But when their parents are ill, anything is acceptable. And it's also permissible to prostrate before one's parents. All the offerings and wealth one receives can be used to support one's parents very well. For example, the Ulambana Sutra also talks about the merits of making offerings to one's parents. So if someone is not respectful to their own parents, then even if they show respect to others, whether it's to your boss or your spiritual teacher, if you treat others very well, it may actually be for other motives. Morally and in terms of etiquette, one should respect their own parents. Of course, last year I also told some parents in the Han region, you are working so hard now to send your children abroad, and after studying overseas for 2 or 3 years, because of some critical thinking ideologies, they seem to show no respect at all to their parents. Of course, not everyone is like this. Some, after going abroad, then learn a lot of very open-minded ideas, and when they return, they are even more respectful to their parents. Some are influenced to a certain extent by certain aspects of Western culture. Even though their parents have worked so hard giving all their money to support their children, including when the parents are old, the situation is really not ideal. There was a story I mentioned before when talking about the standards for being a good student and child. There was a place with a tradition that said when people got old, they would be abandoned in the wild and left to starve to death. A father once said to his young son sternly, "Find a way to take your elderly grandfather somewhere else." The son said, "I don't want to. I will not do such a task." At this point, the father said, "If you absolutely won't go, then I myself will go and leave him there." Then the son said, "If you do go, I have just one request. When you eventually come back, you must bring the basket back with you. Be sure to bring back the basket you used to carry your father." He said, "When you are old, I will carefully put you in that basket, then definitely carry you out and just leave you there." When the father heard this, he became a little frightened. So he didn't abandon his own father after all. Maybe this story isn't true, but there really is such a saying in the Han region. Some of us speak respectfully about our parents, but there are also people who are not respectful to their parents. So, will your own children be respectful to you in the future? It's truly hard to definitively say. This is a fundamental law of nature. Therefore, it's not just exclusively about how we treat our own parents. In fact, whether it's towards our spiritual teachers or regular teachers, I think we must show respect. Anywhere, if you are not respectful to your teacher, then whatever else you do, it's really quite hard to say. Master Tsongkhapa also quoted this teaching in the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. If you have only received 4 lines of verse from an Acharya, but do not regard him as your teacher, then in the future, you will become a vicious dog 100 times, and in the end, you yourself will become a hunchbacked person. It's truly pitiful. So for some of us, including disciples who have already received the kindness of Dharma from their teachers, this is also a form of slandering oneself. Whether it's your Khenpo or your Khenmo, as long as you have received Dharma from a certain teacher or Dharma master, from that moment on, I truly hope you will never ever slander them. If you do slander them, even if you have thousands or millions of reasons, I think from the perspective of the Dharma, there truly will be no good outcome. This is absolutely certain. If you absolutely do not believe in the so-called law of cause and effect, then that's another matter. Nowadays, some great practitioners have already followed their teacher for 10 or 20 years, and in the end they expose some faults of their teacher. This teacher or great practitioner may indeed have made such mistakes, or perhaps not. But regardless of whether the teacher is at fault or not, as a true disciple, if you expose your teacher's faults, then as Buddhists at this time, the emphasis and focus should be placed on the disciple. Such behavior from disciples has also occurred in the West before. Some disciples have followed their teachers for 30 or 40 years, it seems. Some of these people have even received many secret teachings and pith instructions. Later on, they joined together and began to slander certain teachers. Perhaps what they said in their slander was true, and that may be correct. But regardless, if you are a devoted disciple, it seems this is mentioned in Khenpo Achak's A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher. If you truly have a profound, unwavering faith in your trusted teacher, then, from the perspective of the precepts, even if the teacher has relations with 100 women, or if he kills 100 cows, in fact, you should not develop wrong views about him. If you truly have faith in him, there is no need to develop such thoughts. Nowadays, some people often say things like, a scandal involving a certain great master has come to light. They say, with this, the Dharma has already perished. Now is the degenerate age. But actually, I think that if something happens to one person, it really has nothing to do with the flourishing or decline of the entire Dharma. If one person possesses merit, some people say that the hope of the Dharma rests on a single person. This is also quite extremely exaggerated and indeed impossible. After the Buddha entered parinirvana, there were figures like the second Buddha, Guru Padmasambhava and Master Vasubandhu, but even they were not able to uphold the entirety of the Dharma on their own. So, in this degenerate age, to say that the entire Dharma rests all its hope on a single person is also an exaggerated statement. And when one person makes a mistake in their conduct, to think that the Dharma has lost all hope and that it is the degenerate age is actually not the case at all. It's just like among the government officials of any country, you often find many corrupt officials, 100, even 1,000 corrupt officials. Some of them are truly corrupt, while others may not actually be corrupt. But these corrupt officials, do they fundamentally change the entire regime? No, they absolutely do not. Not to mention just one single person. Even if 1,000 people are convicted, the rest of the system still operates as usual. So, for some Buddhists, the reason they lack wisdom is that oftentimes when something happens, they either think it's the degenerate age and everything is falling apart, or they go overboard with praise, neither of which is very reasonable. That's why it's very necessary for us to respect our teachers. If you don't acknowledge the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, then that's another matter. We can discuss it using other philosophies. If we use other philosophies or other lines of reasoning, there might be different explanations. But if we speak from the Buddhist perspective, regardless of Tibetan Buddhism, Han Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, exoteric Buddhism, or esoteric Buddhism, whichever viewpoint, as a disciple, one should have the identity and behavior of a disciple. Nowadays, many people are like, when a disciple exposes, they don't talk about the disciple's faults, but rather whether the teacher has those faults. Maybe the teacher does have this fault, but I think, for example, the omniscient and stainless Longchenpa, due to the karmic fortune of people at the time, was already expelled. As we can see in the biographies, Longchenpa was expelled from both monasteries according to the records. And as for the sixth patriarch, in his biography at the time, what happened is also very clear to everyone. So whether it's Theravada Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, or Tibetan Buddhism in this world, when everyone is talking about a person, I think it's not necessarily so certain, because there might be all kinds of circumstances behind it. As I once wrote on my Weibo, when everyone is praising you, don't get too smug. You might not actually be as good as you think you are. And when everyone is slandering you, don't get discouraged either. You're not necessarily that bad either. That's precisely how I truly see it. So some people in this wide world really don't have their own opinions and just go along with things. Just like I mentioned the other day, with South Korean President Park Geun-hye, she was directly elected, and then tens of thousands of people supported her, saying, our president has come out. But after a period of 2 or 3 years, she ended up in prison. Then subsequently, everyone started supporting her impeachment, and she was finally got removed from her office. So when it comes to certain beliefs, in reality, many people just echo what others say. That's my perspective. I hope everyone analyzes things for themselves. Whether it's towards your parents or your teachers, if respect is due, then it's worth it. A teacher for a day, a father for life, right? In this case, it is a basic principle. Otherwise, you might violate propriety and etiquette. If he goes against nature, the people will have no way to follow his example. If that's not actually the true case, and you truly don't go along with the other people, and instead try to please the people by acting completely against your own deeply held morals, then that's like heading south when you want to go north. It's impossible to achieve good results. Why is that? Because the people don't have proper standards to follow. If you yourself don't show the respect you should, if you don't even respect your parents, if you truly don't even love and deeply respect your very own parents, if you lack even these basic principles, then as a ruler, you won't be able to go along with the people, and you won't be able to govern your subordinates. Why? Because you've already violated the principles. If you violate the principles, then the people have nothing to emulate. There are no established standards and no clear examples to consistently follow. As a direct result, in reality, your actions will unfortunately not succeed. Therefore, education is indeed very important for many of us, especially for educators themselves or those who advocate for education. They must lead by example. If that's the case, then those under them will also do well. It is not about virtue, but all about wickedness. Even if one truly attains it, a gentleman does not truly value it. Here, it clearly states that it is not about virtue. If a ruler, or indeed a person, often fails to perform good deeds, and does not do good things like respecting and caring for their parents, being filial, then, in this case, the actions of such a person have already gone against, or their morals have already become confused. Their moral conduct, because they themselves lack the concept of filial piety, without the thought of being filial, in this case, all their actions and conduct completely go against the basic natural laws of human nature. In such a situation, even if they obtain it, even if they gain widespread fame through some truly despicable means, whether it's immense wealth or significant power that they obtain, they may temporarily acquire these things through various and often questionable means. But for a true gentleman, these particular things are simply not valued, because the manner in which they obtain them just like a swallow, even though it is feeling quite extremely thirsty, will never drink water that has fallen to the ground. There is a teaching like this in the Sakya aphorisms. But the meaning is that a noble person, no matter how difficult the situation, will not stoop to base actions. So if someone is not filial to their parents nor respectful to their teachers, and is also disrespectful to their own spiritual teacher, such a person, even if you have money, even if you have talent, even if you have wisdom, even if you possess all sorts of qualities that people in the world envy, still there are some wise and truly virtuous gentlemen who will not regard these particular things as very important at all. Sometimes we too, in today's society, generally, people with virtue are not necessarily especially respected by everyone. Even if someone lacks virtue, as long as they have money or power, many people show them great respect. Actually, this is because many people lack self-cultivation and lack the ability to discern right from wrong. If we ourselves, and many people in society as a whole, hold the concept of morality, then whoever successfully attains fame and fortune through legitimate means is also deserving of truly widespread recognition by everyone. If someone else's means are not very pure, even if they obtain these things, people will not envy them. Oh, even though a certain individual is now very wealthy, the particular way they acquired their money, what kind of way it is, everyone can see for themselves. Therefore, being a person of strong integrity is also very important and truly essential in our daily lives in the future. Especially for us practitioners, we must always try our very best to. Since we are ordinary people, it's difficult to be completely free of habitual tendencies, but we should still try our best to do things in accordance with the Dharma. Nowadays, some people may truly not understand, while others may have certain motives. This includes some relevant photos online, as well as some informative articles. Whether it's due to ignorance or some other reason, it's not entirely clear. Even I, myself, sometimes often post photos somewhere, perhaps on social media. Recently, there was something said that I said something publicly about whether monastics have sexual desires or not. When I looked at it, most of what was said wasn't truly from me. Maybe someone was deliberately pretending that it was, because if I really did say something, whether it's in my books or in my lectures, then what I say I will definitely take responsibility for. But if there are things I haven't said, maybe there's an agenda behind them. They use this kind of method slowly, progressively, bit by bit, including the fact that our lectures tend to be a bit longer. So does that mean if we stop giving lectures, their goal will be achieved? But that's simply truly impossible no matter what. Even during the time of the Lotus Sutra, I actually spoke even more. Sometimes that's just how it is. And then some people, because their thinking basically aligns with his, maybe it's better to write it this way, and it's also possible that some people approach it like this. But actually, no matter what the case is, everyone has their own unique and deeply held set of principles, the fundamental values they actively promote, the articles they thoughtfully share. They each possess their own distinct and guiding set of rules. So, we sincerely hope that whether it's online in the digital realm or elsewhere, if there are other motives, we don't really mind. Nowadays, the internet is full of all kinds of things. But if your intentions are good, we hope that without our consent, please don't use all sorts of different names to promote things without explicit permission. Doing so really is not appropriate. It's a type of behavior that could be considered quite irresponsible to other individuals. Whether it's with spoken words or formal speeches, we should always conscientiously maintain a rigorous and meticulous attitude. I sincerely hope that everyone will pay attention to this important aspect in the future as well. Next, it says, a true gentleman is not like that at all. As a gentleman, one does not use improper means to promote their own nobility. So what is a gentleman like? There are 6 principles for a gentleman which will be discussed next. Indeed, although these teachings do not contain the secret instructions of esoteric Buddhism, nor do they talk about the bodhicitta of Mahayana Buddhism, I still think these basic teachings on how to be a good person are extremely valuable. This includes us Buddhists and monastics as well. If we can possess these qualities in our conduct, then in the future we ourselves can also become excellent monastics. And if you are not a Buddhist or a religious believer, if you truly incorporate these teachings into your daily life, they may truly bring about a significant change in your behavior. Because nowadays, for many of us, whether in middle school or even in elementary school curricula, such specialized knowledge is quite rarely taught, making it exceptionally uncommon to encounter. Therefore, it is explicitly stated here, speech should be thoughtful, actions should be joyful, virtue and righteousness should be respected, conduct should be exemplary, demeanor should be admirable, and one should know when to advance or retreat. Altogether, there are 6 shoulds. These 6 shoulds are indeed extremely important for us. If one is governing the people, these principles are especially meaningful. So first of all, how exactly should a gentleman conduct himself? He would not speak carelessly or recklessly at all. He should carefully think things through thoroughly and completely before he begins to speak. And after he has spoken, what exactly do people gain from it? They praise him, and people are convinced both in word and in heart. His language is very precise and logical, so when he speaks, he never speaks carelessly or thoughtlessly without thoroughly thinking things through completely. That's absolutely not the case at all. In Mipham Rinpoche's treatise on the modes of a ruler, there is a special section dedicated to language. You can't just open your mouth and speak casually. That's not acceptable. So this is the first crucial point, speaking only after careful and thorough consideration. Then he receives people's praise, admiration, and acceptance. And his actions are also delightful to contemplate. Everything that you do, your own personal actions, should also be carefully carried out after very careful thought. When you act in this thoughtful way, you truly bring happiness to others. You should absolutely not let your actions cause others pain, sadness, or anger at all. Some people are especially mischievous. For example, some monks or managers in particular. Because of his behavior, some stewards become especially annoyed. For example, if there is a student who is particularly disobedient, the teacher will also be unhappy every day. If a person's behavior is very proper and in accordance with the rules, just like Bhikshu Mersheng, through his actions, he makes everyone feel joyful and brings them happiness. So if you let your actions be carefully guided by thoughtful consideration, and then gradually put them into practice, you will bring happiness to others. Then, the virtues and the rules you thoughtfully establish will certainly earn you the respect from others. Because your behavior is proper and in accordance with the rules, everyone shows respect. This includes some of us who are monastics. Because your conduct is proper, everyone must respect you. This is it means to be worthy of respect through virtue and righteousness. Your actions serve as a model, because as a ruler, no matter what you do, you possess wisdom and the ability to reflect. whatever actions you undertake, people will very often be able to follow your excellent example. It's also clearly mentioned in the treatise on the modes of a ruler. In addition, the kings and monarchs. What are their good and bad deeds like? All relatives will follow suit, and their own actions will be the same. As a monarch, or as some monarchs, whether your behavior is good or bad, people will follow his example. Consequently, the people who follow will behave in the same manner. It seems that some time ago, we also used this teaching, right? His Holiness used to quote it quite often as well. For example, if a principal behaves in a certain way, then the teachers under him will all naturally follow that example. For example, a leader likes to drink, then his subordinates also like to drink. If a leader loves to study, it's precisely the same. I heard that in one particular place, the leadership kept constantly changing. One leader especially loved reading books, so everyone under him bought books every day. Then there was a leader who was especially fond of all kinds of stones. Many people working under him also went everywhere to diligently buy all sorts of precious stones. Then after a while, another leader took over. He especially liked planting many trees, and the people who worked under him diligently followed suit. Sometimes we really are like this. For example, in one place, say a Dharma center, if the main person in charge especially loves listening, contemplating, and practicing the teachings, everyone loves listening, contemplate, and practice. If the main person in charge doesn't like these things and just enjoys dancing the Vajra dance every day, then even those who can't dance will end up dancing around too. This is also a kind of situation. Because they want to please the leader, those below have no choice but to dance. He thinks that those who don't dance are bad people, and those who do are all good people. So just to make the leader truly happy and satisfied, people will often do this too. All the followers imitate this, and their actions are the same as well. This is exactly what Mifam Rinpoche said, and it's really true. Whether it's a large country, a small group, or even just one person, including what we're doing today, which is holding a meeting for the Khenpos from the three classes: science of arts and crafts, science of calculation, and science of sound. In the science of sound, the main focus is Sanskrit. We've discussed this. If the person in charge is proficient in everything, they'll feel everything needs to be learned. For example, if the head of academic affairs is well versed in both exoteric and esoteric teachings and is knowledgeable about worldly cultures, he might want to study them. But if he is proficient in the 5 great treatises, he will require everyone to study the 5 great treatises. So the mindset of our main leaders, their values and their behavior are all extremely important. Therefore, what is being said here is that whatever the monarch does, those who are below them will also do precisely the same. Also, his bearing and appearance are admirable. Bearing refers to his demeanor and expression. Or in other words, his appearance and words and actions, that is to say, his entire body and overall behavior, or whatever these aspects are like, those below will also imitate him, look up to him, and observe him closely. Whatever he chooses to wear, as we often say, everyone wants the very same style. Whatever this particular celebrity wears, people below also wear the same. And whatever he likes, those below also like to wear that kind of thing. This is also something that everyone will imitate. There's also the idea of advancing and retreating with proper measure. In other words, moving forward and stepping back. Whether he takes a step forward or back, or when it comes to choosing and giving up, the actions involved in the very choosing and indeed quite giving up are also, whether it's these monarchs or these sages, all their actions of choosing and giving up can also be potentially measured or even speculated upon by others. People will imitate them as well. It will be like this. So these 6 kinds of should mentioned above, to govern the people effectively, through the careful application of these 6 distinct methods, he can successfully rule over the populace below him. This is precisely what a monarch should do. He will consequently hold a very important and influential position in the world and among all nations. Of course, some truly wise and insightful monarchs on the one hand diligently study by themselves and on the other hand thoughtfully consult with others. In the treatise on the modes of a ruler, it is also said, all the most excellent monarchs, in order to discern what is reasonable and what is not, should study various treatises and texts and also rely on those who possess virtue. This truly means that some genuinely good and wise rulers, in order to accurately know what is truly reasonable and what is absolutely not reasonable in their governance and decisions, will study all kinds of treatises and texts, and at the same time they will rely on people who possess virtue. In the future, when we ourselves become people in charge, don't just think, now I'm already in charge. Now I see that after some students have done well in their exams, they stop studying altogether. And actually, this isn't very good. In the future, in order to further study the principles of what is reasonable and what is not, one way is to read books and study various treatises, continuing to learn without stopping. Another way is to regularly and humbly rely on some teachers, especially in your area of expertise. For example, if I am lacking in a certain field, I should keep seeking guidance. Sometimes when we go out and have the opportunity, we also often go and consult some teachers at the school. We ask them some pertinent questions, and doing this is actually very meaningful. Some of them are more specialized or research-oriented. The valuable knowledge they impart to us in a relatively short period of time is actually very effective and truly beneficial. So we should consistently continue to learn through various comprehensive means. Therefore, if the people both truly fear and genuinely love him, they will certainly follow and earnestly emulate him. If this is indeed the case, then his loyal people will both have a sense of awe towards such a ruler on one hand, and on the other hand, they will love and especially cherish him. Moreover, they will imitate the actions he takes. So, a truly successful ruler does not necessarily have to rely on fines, punishments, or death sentences every day, or use very harsh and severe measures to govern. Instead, he should always maintain order through his inherent authority, profound virtue, genuine love, and deep compassion. In fact, the people below him are also extremely, extremely afraid of him. Whenever people actually see him, they are especially quite fearful. But deep down inside, they also truly love him very much. Whenever he leaves, everyone might even cry. So, truly great, successful, effective, and wise rulers use their authority and virtue to guide people, not necessarily insults or punishments. Of course, in today's era, there are still a few people who, without some form of punishment, there may be certain difficulties, but genuine love is very important. If you truly rely on this kind of profound love, then many people will ultimately and genuinely learn from his exemplary way of doing things. In the past, our precious and revered guru would sometimes give very stern and direct criticism, but most of the time, towards all his devoted disciples, he showed a heartfelt kind of love. And this love was not only related to our wisdom, but also in many other ways. At that time, many of our living conditions were quite poor. Now, when I think back, I often recall some of the details from those days. If only the guru were still here now, how wonderful that would be. I often think this way. For example, when I frequently travel from Seda to Luhuo, there's a tunnel now. But in the past, we had to cross mountains. And when passing through the tunnel, I think, now the gurus have all passed away. In the past, when the gurus went out to spread the Dharma, they had to cross mountains. Back then, the vehicles we rode in as well, they were usually just jeeps, and the ride was extremely bumpy. Even masters like The, when they came to hold Dharma assemblies or traveled elsewhere, sometimes it would take 4 or 5 days just to get from here to Chengdu. At that time, the perseverance of the gurus and their love for their disciples was truly remarkable. Whether they were leaving or returning, their care for us extended not only to our study, contemplation, and practice, but also to our daily lives. They considered so many aspects. This kind of love seemed to come naturally. It wasn't because of some policy, as will be discussed later. Therefore, one can effectively accomplish moral teaching and also thereby carry out administrative orders. It was truly through the profound power of their moral influence that they were able to smoothly and effectively implement their policies. Because they had love, and with love they were able to win people over with virtue. Whether it was policy, orders, or rules, all of these, everyone would naturally be convinced and willing to accept them. If you lack such morality and love and instead use forceful methods, then when there are policies from above, there will be countermeasures from below. Sometimes that's truly just how it really goes. No matter how much you diligently try to set clear rules for them, the clever ways they find to deceive you might only significantly increase. So sometimes genuine love is truly, really important. Especially in the future, when it comes to our own families. What we're mainly discussing today is about family members and relatives and friends. We must have a heartfelt love and a genuine desire to help them. This is something we should start from now on. This includes some Buddhists and monastics, some of whom are only children. They have already been admitted to university, but if they can't complete their studies now, then starting this current year, we sincerely hope that for many young children, we know if they unfortunately encounter difficulties, for example, if they can't afford to attend vocational school, we should help them. If they can't afford university, we can also help through the foundation. And by joining together with like-minded Dharma friends, many of us now make offerings to this guru or that guru. I feel that making offerings to gurus, maybe I'm committing an offense by saying this, but I think that true gurus are never short of money. If they are genuine gurus, they definitely have plenty of money. It would be much better to help some people right around us instead. For example, a few of us could come together to help a college student finish their studies. It doesn't necessarily have to be your direct relative. As long as you find a family where some time ago there was a particular woman in my hometown. She came with her 2 children, and after she arrived, she kept crying. She said, "If you hadn't supported me back then, I wouldn't be where I am today." Now she has already found a job. She has also started a family and has been working for 8 years. Back when she was studying, we provided her with financial support. If she hadn't received that support, she wouldn't have been able to continue her studies at all back then. She couldn't get past this hurdle because of her family circumstances in every aspect, let alone going to college. Even basic survival was very difficult. At that time, she kept saying, "If you hadn't supported me back then, I might be working odd jobs every day now." When she described it so specifically, I really felt that now, including sometimes when we do certain things like making Buddha statues, there is merit in that too. But many of us make Buddha statues for the sake of receiving blessings ourselves. And then making offerings to the guru is for receiving blessings for ourselves. A lot of it is selfish. This is far from bodhicitta. So we should wholeheartedly, you might notice, whether among those around you or in our Dharma centers, whether it's our Vajra friends or non-Buddhist, non-Vajra friends, some of them in fact have really good grades and have already been admitted to excellent schools. But look, the tuition fees at these schools are so incredibly high now, and then there are all sorts of other expenses in between. Sometimes nowadays this era is quite a special one. At this time, among a few of us, there might be just one college student. If we support them for 3 or 4 years, I think this might surpass many other kinds of merit. In the future, we hope to make offerings to gurus and to the Sangha. Making offerings to the Sangha brings great merit. As for the gurus, it's hard to say. If the guru is a good one, there may be merit. If not, then both oneself and others may suffer. Some time ago, I saw someone who made offerings of hundreds of thousands to a fake guru. Now they're preparing to get a statement from the bank, find a lawyer, contact the police, so many procedures. Actually, they were quite ignorant themselves, not investigating at all at the time. This is not as good as what you can see with your own eyes, those around you. Sometimes we really feel that there are people who simply can't afford to go to school. We should still try to find ways through the foundation and through various means to get in touch with us as well. We will also try to find a way regarding this. I think when we talk about the classic of filial piety, if we just keep repeating filial, 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 in reality, on one hand, it's just theoretical for us. But anyone can talk about theory. I think you all can speak about it many times better than I can. I'm someone from an outside ethnic group, so for me to talk about it here, it's really just showing off in front of experts. It doesn't mean much. But if we can grasp its essence, its spirit, after studying the classic of filial piety, there are 2 things we need to do. One thing is, regardless of whether your parents treat you well or not, if your parents are still alive, then from now on, during the rest of your life, you must change your attitude. If your parents are no longer here, when I often go on pilgrimages or visit temples, I dedicate the merit to them. This is one thing. The second thing is, nowadays we talk about respecting the elderly and loving the young, loving the young. Around us there are people, patients who are pitiful, and we often help them. But more importantly, in terms of education nowadays, there really are some people who can't afford to go to school. They only have these few years, if they've already reached this critical point. Among us Tibetans, there's a saying, in spring sometimes the yaks are extremely, extremely thin. When the cuckoo first arrives, it is especially thin. At that particular time, people would feed it a little bit of grass. After about a dozen days or so, its physical body quickly becomes incredibly strong and robust. This is a critical point, a kind of pattern, you could say. For yaks in spring, they also have this critical period. At that time, their bodies are especially weak, and it's hard for them to even stand up. Most yaks, unfortunately, die during that critical time, specifically in the early spring. In much the same way, many deserving students from financially struggling families frequently can't get past that significant hurdle of successfully going to high school or even college, at this crucial time, whether we personally know them or not. If everyone comes together to help them up, some people will be grateful to you in the future, like, wow, back then you helped me. But for some other people, they will even delete you from their WeChat. because he is unwilling to admit that he had received help from others in the past. Otherwise, they feel it's something shameful. So ever since I was young, I've always been a strong person. They have to show this side of themselves in front of others. But no matter what, we shouldn't worry about that. Whether they repay your kindness or not, it doesn't really matter. So we should think about this a bit more. Finally, as it says in the Book of Songs, a virtuous person, a gentleman, his conduct is never improper. A virtuous person should be good, beautiful, kind. A kind and noble person, a good gentleman, if someone is a good gentleman, their demeanor never be improper. Whether you're a monastic or a layperson, demeanor matters for everyone. In fact, a person's demeanor is important because we live in an era where everyone values appearance highly. If we dress in extremely shabby, tattered clothes, don't wash our faces, don't comb our hair, don't brush our teeth, and wear especially ragged clothing, then no matter what kind of situation we're really in, many people, for various reasons, won't want to see us or indeed even meet with us. Thus, no matter in what kind of situation, we should at least, of course, as Buddhists, it's truly unnecessary to go to extremes in these aspects, but basic decorum is still very important. Now, internationally, all those people with relatively high overall qualities have this same perspective and behave in this way as well. So in this context, it is also mentioned here that as long as someone has good insight and good moral character, such a person will always maintain good decorum. Some of our monastics are like this as well. A true monastic, no matter where they always go, will always maintain the proper decorum of a monastic and will not abandon it. But some average monastics are very dignified and respectful in the sutra hall, but when they are in different situations, sometimes their behavior may change. Of course, some of our monastics, due to cultural reasons, might visit their parents during the New Year, and at such times they have no choice but to wear a red coat over their robes. There's nothing that can be done about it if it's really not possible, because the parents absolutely do not want to see you come home with a completely shaved head, Then in such cases, if it really can't be helped, some people haven't gone back to see their parents for over 10 years, just for this reason. Isn't it just like that many people nowadays rent a boyfriend or girlfriend to meet their parents? We rent clothes, rent a red coat, and then rent a wig. But it's truly best not to do so, because if you act in this way, you might end up liking the wig in the future. Who knows? In this case, proceed gradually, because you are not yet fully mature. Moreover, these habits from lay life continue on in your mind stream, and these are quite serious. So in the future, it's hard to say what might happen. All right, that's all for today.
Om